The changes that Cold War is about to receive in World of Tanks console is going to be game changing and probably the biggest Cold War update that we will ever see since at least the beginning of Cold War. And so let's have a look at exactly what this is all about, because Wargaming have been kind of looking into the module costs and of course the silver that we're going to be earning in the game, which is of course a bit of a bone of contention of many people with regards to Cold War and the cost of some of the modules, the exponential cost in how much it's actually going to cost you to go from a Era 1 vehicle all the way to an Era 10, and we're going to cover everything that you need to know about what Wargaming are planning to do in January 30th, which is when the update will go live. You can see this article on the Wargaming website if you want to read in depth and you don't want to listen to the entire video, but in terms of going through it, we can kind of give my own opinion on some of this stuff, as well as I'll be interested to see what you guys are thinking, because yeah, I'll as we go through, I'll kind of give you my opinion as we go. But so, starting with January 30th, update, tech tree tanks and modules in Cold War will require less vehicle XP and silver so that you can progress through the eras more quickly. So what Wargaming are saying here is that they're going to reduce the vehicle XP required to get certain vehicles, as well as the silver required to get the vehicles, which is going to allow you to basically not have to grind as much in Cold War to get a load of vehicles, which is brilliant. I think it's good for newer players. Of course, if you never want to play World War II, you don't have to, and now you can kind of play this straight from the beginning. You don't really need any experience to do it, so it's going to be kind of what I would assume World War II is like from 0 to tier 10. We launched Cold War mode on April 27th, 2021, so it's been in the game for, well, coming up to 3 years now, and they're proud of how it started and what it's become. At the same time, in the spirit of improvement, we've constantly thought about ways to make it better for everyone who plays World of Tanks Modern Armor. We're incredibly grateful to all of you who have played Cold War, whether you tried it out briefly or made it your go-to game mode. You've given us crucial feedback to help guide our decisions. So, apparently one piece of feedback that everybody was kind of saying is that progressing through the Cold War tech trees takes too long, which I kind of agree with. Every single tank is about 150k to 200k XP in terms of just getting the tank itself, and of course all of the modules added onto that are taking XP costs for every single tank in the line, a ton of time for the average player, which is not particularly fun when you're stuck on stock tanks and stuff like that. So yeah, it's not ideal. So Wargaming agree it is taking too long and players should be able to kind of grind through the tech trees a lot faster, which to be honest with you, I agree with. I think you should be able to try out new tanks, experiment with different tanks, not feel like you're constantly in a perpetual grind, never really being able to fully customize the tank how you want and play the tank how you want, because by the time that you've got enough XP to get the gun, for example, at the end, you then have to spend a load of money for it, but then you've basically got the next tank, so no one ever really plays the fully upgraded tank because it's not really worth it in terms of the silver, unless of course you want to keep the tank and keep playing, but that's probably the minority of players in World of Tanks console. But so starting with the game on the game update on Tuesday, January 30th, you will see the following changes in Cold War to speed up your progression. So module costs will be reduced, so every single module will cost less silver and less vehicle XP, so you don't have to grind as much. So how have they done that? Well, it is 54% less silver to be able to get each of the modules, so that's on average. This is kind of like the average value, and you've got 62% less vehicle XP overall. So between, like, you know, Era 1 to Era 3, there's a 62% less vehicle XP required. Same with the silver, which I think is very, very good. It should make it a lot easier. Vehicle costs will also be reduced, so 52% less silver overall, and of course 20% less vehicle XP overall. So between both of these, you're saving yourself a ton of kind of XP as well as silver as you're grinding through, which I think is very, very good, and it should make it a lot better. However, earn rates will be adjusted for premium tanks and tech tree vehicles. So base silver rates will be reduced, but we will still be higher than World War II. Base vehicle XP rates will remain unchanged, so there'll be no changes in how much XP you earn, just the amount of silver that you earn. I think we kind of get the idea as to what Wargaming are trying to do here, because at the end of the day, I was one of those players that literally only played Cold War so that I could go out and be able to get a ton of silver and then jump back into World War II, breaking the economy, earning millions of silver in Cold War, and then coming back to World War II, playing World War II and literally not really having to use any of my premium tanks for the actual purpose of using them for earning silver, and so felt almost obliged that I had to play Cold War if I wanted to kind of max my XP, or silver I should say, to be able to get kind of competitive amounts of silver so that I didn't have to spend a load of time. So, on average, players will be able to complete an entire tech tree line in Cold War by playing 25% fewer battles with millions less vehicle XP and silver required. So this is brilliant. I think that this is much, much better, and it will be very much a good thing in the long run, even if you do have a reduced earn rate for the silver. Now, why are they doing it? When we brought Cold War into the game, we initially envisaged it as a late game mode that would appeal to long-time players. So kind of like you played a lot of World War II, you jump in and you want a new experience, which would be Cold War. However, in all honesty, a lot of new players and stuff like that are actually playing Cold War. And it's kind of a novel thing to console compared to, you know, PC and stuff like that. So World of Tanks console want to appeal to a wider audience, which I think is great. And of course, Cold War does that. But the problem is it isn't very new player friendly to players that only really want to play the Cold War vehicles, because they have to have an inordinate amount of silver. They have to have a ton of premium time. They have to have all of the boosters and stuff like that to be able to do it effectively. And of course, when you're brand new, you don't really know what you're doing in the game. So making it easier for those players, as well as people that, you know, like myself, are not wanting to spend years literally grinding out tech tree lines in Cold War, then yeah, it's going to make it a lot better. We can have a lot more content, a lot more kind of variety in the tanks that we can all play in a lot shorter of a time, making it, I guess, more in line with what World War II is right now, where, you know, it gradually gets harder and harder to get the next tank as you go through the tech era line, I guess is what you should call it. But either way, you get my drift. Now, however, Cold War mode has evolved. New players can start their battlefield journey in either Cold War or World War II mode. We want everyone, newcomers and battlefield veterans alike, to have a seamless experience no matter which game mode they prefer to play. That means bringing module cost, tank progression and earn rates in Cold War in line with those in World War II, so that the entire game experience can be balanced. I think that this is a very, very good change. I think it was very weird to have the ridiculous amounts of silver that you can earn in Cold War, and then having the ridiculous amounts of silver cost, but then being able to transfer your money from Cold War over to World War II and basically remove the entire experience of having to get silver and kind of choose the modules wisely that you have in World War II, which I think is, it should make it more interesting. I think that it is going to be a good change, to be honest with you. So how did they get to these numbers, as in the numbers here that is on screen? Obviously, if you want to take a quick look at them, of course, you can just pause the video. But yeah, we'll move on. How did they get to those numbers? Well, to start, the T125 line requires far less vehicle XP and silver to complete. So this is what they're comparing it to, the M1A2 Abrams. So there was, in order to get the E5 versus the M1A2 Abrams, you had to get 28% less vehicle XP. So that's to get to the T125 versus the M1A2 Abrams. And then 72% less silver, which, when you consider you're probably spending upwards of about 60 million or something silly to be able to actually fully unlock an entire Cold War tech tree line or era line, whatever. That is crazy. And that means that players needed to play far less in order to complete the T125 line. So 17% fewer days to complete the T125 line versus the M1A2 Abrams line, and 4% fewer battles to complete the T125 versus the M1A2 Abrams. So that's how long it took. But basically, progression through a World War II line has been faster overall for the community, and we want Cold War to be accessible at similar paces, and giving people basically the speed at which, you know, you feel like you're progressing, rather than just every single time you're constantly earning the same amount of XP, the same amount of module XP, having to spend the same amount of silver kind of, and then, you know, it just taking longer and longer and longer and you don't feel like you're really getting through a lot of tanks, trying out different tanks, that sort of thing. So after that, we ran a number of simulations. We experimented with different adjustments to vehicle XP and silver earn rates and costs to bring them closer to what players experience in World War II. I think this is a good thing. I think the game should be kind of cohesive, you know, where everything is all similar, because it feels very weird. I did find it a bit of a shock when you were earning, you know, 3 million silver in a game from an operation that they had. It just felt a bit silly. So we ran them through internal tests and measure how long it would take to complete a Cold War tech tree line with updated costs in place. So they basically replaced the old system, ran a load of simulations with a new system and saw what would work best. So, and after our early rounds of initial tests, we got our community contributors involved to see what we could get their essential feedback on the changes, which I was a part of. So yeah, they did ask what sort of things I felt were useful, what sort of things were maybe overlooked, maybe that sort of stuff, and I think that it was a good time to be able to actually interact with Wargaming and of course give your feedback that I've seen on tons of videos on what you find annoying about the game. So obviously trying to iron those out with this new system that Wargaming are implementing, I think it was a very, very good experience, a positive experience, and hopefully Wargaming will continue to do this because it is just very, very beneficial to everyone involved, and especially you guys because you're the ones that actually have to play the game, so at least getting an idea as to what they're doing is very, very beneficial to everyone involved, because you know you don't want them going off and doing something silly and then coming back and everyone hates it, etc. Now, there will be people who are annoyed about this. Maybe you're annoyed about the Cold War changes. And of course, there are a couple reasons which I think are valid, which I think are completely valid. And we'll get to those at the end of the video, as well as some that I already know people are going to be angry about that aren't really that valid. So yeah, either way, are those reductions in cost the same across every era? They are not. We noticed that the biggest roadblocks seem to be situated in post-war era 1. So I guess a lot of people coming on, playing a couple games, realizing that it's terrible in era 1, and then being like, yeah, I'm leaving. I'm not playing again. So that's probably what it was. And so they want to hopefully make it a little bit more seamless to get new tanks, that sort of stuff, and just make it seem a little bit easier. That's exactly where we don't want them to be, so especially for new players who begin their tanking careers in Cold War, or any players who are simply excited to start conquering a new tech tree line. So you'll see a much greater reduction in silver costs for tanks and modules in post-war and escalation, as opposed to the third era detente. Costs will also be reduced in detente era 3, but not as steeply. So it's kind of like a shifting amount of XP as you go from like the first era first tank to the end era 3 end tank, if that makes sense. So it should seamlessly work almost like a World War II tech tree, whereby you know you might have, I don't know, 10,000 XP for the first tank versus 300k XP for the final tank, and like in between you get increments of extra XP that you require to get the next tank. So you know it works as though you have to grind through more in the later stages versus the early stages, which is exactly what it is in World War II, and I think it's a good system that didn't really need to have been changed when they brought out Cold War in the first place, but hey ho, at least we're getting these good changes that I think will be good. Are those reductions in cost same across every era? So obviously we talked about it, and these are not either. So you know everything is kind of staggered as you go through. So for example, Wargaming have provided this little sheet which tells you exactly what they're kind of doing. So between the first era, so Cold War tanks silver by era. So when you purchase the first one, it doesn't cost anything, which is why you know it's not costing anything and there's no reduction. But the first one, the current silver cost to actually purchase the next tank is 3.45 million silver. Now, with the changes that they're going to do, 250,000 silver. So a saving of 3.2 million from the first to the second tank, which I think is amazing. It's only going to cost you 250k, and by the time that you've probably got to the second tank and unlock the XP, you're probably going to have 250k silver, and the difference is 93%. So a massive, massive change to the amount of silver required. And then similarly, the top tier of the era 1, you're going to have a 3.6 million reduction, going from 4.38 million down to 760,000, which is brilliant. It's just going to make it a lot more better when it comes to kind of saving yourself a load of money. And then of course second era bottom tier, it's another reduction of about 3 million, and then that kind of stays along the entire tech tree line. So they've kind of knocked off about 3.5 to 3.6, in some cases slightly lower, across all of the tech tree tanks that you can purchase. Obviously some of them are really expensive now, but with a reduction of 3 million only works out as like a percentage difference of like 38%. So but that's primarily just because they were so expensive at the beginning. So yeah, when you consider that you're saving like 3 million, 3 million, 3 million, 3 million, blah, 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 you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You've got 8 lots of about 3.5 million, which off the top of my head should be about 27 million, something like that, or 28 million saved between the first and the third era. So yeah, very, very much amount of silver. So, oh yeah, it's literally there right in front of me. Of course it is. Anyway, 28 million. You've got a total difference combined at 5.52%. So a 52% less silver to purchase the tanks. And then similarly, the Cold War modules have been changed massively. This is probably where the best thing about it is. And you can see here, from the first tank to be able to get to the second one, you have to purchase modules. Or you don't have to, but which is what a lot of people were doing. They just weren't purchasing modules because it was just crazy how much they were costing, and that, you know, by the time that you basically earned the silver to be able to get those modules, you'd already got the next tank. So you're not going to purchase modules on a tank that you've already played through and got the next tank on. You'd rather spend it on the next tank itself. And so, the first one, it's gone from 4.18 million to fully kit out the tank down to 63,000. So a huge change to the amount of silver required, which is amazing. I think this is brilliant, and just going to make it a lot easier for you guys to kit out your tanks before you reach the next one. And that means, you know, that's the same for basically all of the tech tree tanks. So yeah, you're going to save yourself a ton of silver, not just from the actual tank's cost, but also the modules that it has. And this should be really good. I think it is genuinely one of the best changes that Wargaming are going to do to Cold War to make it a lot easier for people to get into, as well as kind of feel like you're not just constantly grinding silver to be able to do things that you want to do in the game. And so, Vehicle XP for modules and tanks presents a different story. So as you saw in the T110E5 versus the M1A2 Abrams, vehicle XP requirements aren't too different from World War II to Cold War. So while you see a heavy reduction in vehicle XP needed to unlock tanks in post-war and escalation, you won't see a reduction in Detente era costs for tanks, so they will remain the exact same. So what they're trying to do here is, you see here between era 1, the bottom tier, is it's costing about 15,000 now compared to the 114,000. And so from doing that, what they've done is kind of taken this for middle era tanks, so the XP required, to about a level tier 5 tank in World War II. So when you jump into Cold War, you're essentially starting about tier 5 levels of XP required to get the tank. And then of course, as you go through, you're probably going up like tier 5, tier 6, tier 7, tier 8, tier 9, tier 10, tier 10, and then tier 10. And even then, at the top tiers, they're not necessarily even tier 10 costs, they're probably slightly less. However, it's where the modules cost the most. So you can see here, this is the Cold War modules by XP, and so by era as well. So you can see here, the modules used to cost 95,000 XP to get the first tier era or first era first tank. So 95,000, that's gone down to 7,000. So a lot cheaper, as again, like a tier 5 vehicle. And that kind of changes, goes up as you go through. And then with the top tier kind of era 3 vehicles, you're getting about 100,000 XP to fully kit out the tank. And with 301,000 being the starting, so you're saving yourself a huge amount of XP to be able to get it. So a huge difference, which I think is very good and very beneficial to anyone that actually wants to grind through the tanks. So to give you a concrete example, here's a comparison of XP and silver needed for a specific gun module before and after the changes. In this case, we're looking at the 105mm gun for the M48A5 pattern in the game. So 105 gun module, it used to cost 166,000 XP. Now it costs 45,000, so about 4 times less. You've got current silver required, 2 million. It's going down to 350,000. So once again, you've got almost a 7 times reduction. It's probably about 6.5, something like that. 6 maybe, to be able to reduce down. So a huge reduction. You're getting tons and tons of silver knocked off of these tanks. And yeah, instead of not only doing that, but you see here, the top of Era 1 before, you had the M48A5 pattern with the gun after the module, after the tank. So you got the tank, you got the next tank even. You then wanted to upgrade the one that you had, but you wanted the gun from the start. So you basically ended up getting the next tank, buying the next tank, and never using the top gun on the tank. So what they've done here is now they've actually kind of backpedaled and put the gun before the next tank, which is probably where it should have been in the first place. The kind of point in doing this was, I'm assuming, that they wanted you to kind of play the tank after and grind the silver to be able to get the next one. But obviously it didn't work, so they've now put it behind the tank so you actually get it, which is good. And so they will be adjusting the order of any modules that were positioned this way and moving them ahead of the next tank in the level up progression. So this change will also go live on January 30th. So these will be live. So you'll see the guns swapping back behind the tank that you unlock next, which I think is something that should have been in the game in the first place, and is great that they're actually doing it now. And you know, I think it's good. Either way, if I purchase Cold War tanks and modules now, will I be compensated for the difference in silver? This is the bit that is a bit sore, I guess, for some people. This is the valid reason that some people will be annoyed. Say yesterday, in the morning yesterday, you bought all of your tanks using silver that you've just purchased from the game with actual money. You know, you can do that. You will not be compensated. There will be no silver compensation if you choose to purchase tanks now and in the lead up. So, you know, before these changes, they're still the same price until January 30th. So until January 30th, you will still have the same price of silver. You'll still have all of the earn rates. You'll still have everything that it currently is now. And so if you spend your silver now on upgrading your Cold War tanks, you will not get your silver back. So that is a flat thing. Wargaming are not going to be giving silver back. It will be an absolute nightmare to do it, I assume, from a logistical standpoint. And so they've just taken the stance that there will be no silver compensation for anyone that purchases it, whether you purchase it with just silver that you've earned in the game or with silver that you've bought in the game. It does not matter. So just do not spend your silver on upgrading packages between now and January 30th. They've given a little bit of a kind of heads up so that you guys can understand before the update goes live, so that, you know, in the lead up to actually getting this update, that you haven't then gone and kind of not known about it. It's suddenly come up and you're like, but yesterday I didn't even know this was coming. So they've given a little bit of leeway so that you guys can actually understand that, yes, I will not be spending my silver from here on until January 30th, until the changes go live. Similarly, it's the exact same thing for XP. There'll be no kind of compensation for a free XP to that you might have purchased and then of course gone ahead and used on any of these tanks. So do not use your free XP, do not use your silver, and well, you can do either if you really want to, but I'm just saying, if you want to maximize how much your kind of silver and your free XP is currently worth right now in Cold War, then just wait until January 30th and spend it all then, because it's going to save you about 3 or 4 or maybe even 7 times how much free XP you're going to have to use to unlock the tanks. So with that out of the way, it is a bit annoying if you have done that. I can completely agree. It is super annoying, but to be honest with you, these changes have to come in, and there's only so much kind of stuff that they can give you, you know. It's one of those things that, yeah, you might have been super unlucky, and that is what it is. That's how games work. You know, the game could close tomorrow. No one can play it anymore. So, you know, it's always a risk you take if you're going to purchase stuff. And I always implore you that, you know, if you're going to spend money on the game, just be sure that, you know, the game could close tomorrow and you could lose everything that you spent. So much like if you go into, for example, a casino, only ever take money that you're willing to lose every single lot of it. And that's the exact same thing with purchasing anything on any video game, regardless of World of Tanks. So just avoid, you know, purchasing stuff that you feel like you're putting yourself out for, or, you know, you're going to end up in a worse financial situation. Just spend what you can on the game and fully well know that things like this can happen. It sucks. It absolutely sucks if you've already spent money. But, you know, at least they've given us now the leeway between now and when the update actually goes live so that you know not to do it. Hopefully, they'll kind of give us some more information in the game. So if you've been seeing that in the game, you'll know exactly what's happening and you're not spending any money. And there's only so much they can kind of get out there. Some people will just continue to buy and pay for stuff, and, you know, as long as they've given at least a fair warning, which I think 2 weeks is a fair warning, yeah, I think it's kind of fair. And so I think it's a good change. And unfortunately, in the short term, it will suck. But in the long term, this will be brilliant for the game. I think it is a better, just generically good update that I don't think in the long term anyone can complain about at all. Unless, of course, you want to earn silver in Cold War to jump back into World War II, which I'm not going to feel sorry for you. You've just got to, you know, put your big boy pants on and realise that everyone had to do that before Cold War came out 3 years ago. So, yeah, either way, you might actually enjoy playing some of the World War II premium tanks that still earn a lot of silver, like, for example, the Crimson tanks that we did a feature on recently. And of course, I'll jump that all into one video as the Crimson tanks, so you guys know these are kind of the best tanks to earn silver in World War II, because they get a 75% silver bonus, and you earn about 250,000 silver in each game, provided you have a good game. And of course, when you have like some of the events that Wargaming run, like XP with interest, silver with interest, you can earn a ridiculous amount of silver, even in World War II, earning millions of silver a game. So yeah, I don't think that silver is going to be a problem. It just means that if you played Cold War only to earn silver, you may want to actually just play World War II now. And even though, you know, the earn rates for silver are still higher from what Wargaming have said in Cold War than World War II, it's something you can do. But there you go. I don't think you have a leg to stand on, really, if you're complaining about the fact that you can't play, you know, Cold War to be able to earn silver to play World War II again. So yeah, I think that, you know, overall, if you're playing Cold War, it's a brilliant change for you. And if you are a World War II player that plays Cold War, this update isn't for you, so I don't think it really matters, to be honest with you. So that's kind of how I would feel. And bearing in mind, I'm one of those players that only plays Cold War to be able to earn silver, or, you know, when I feel like having a bit of a chill time, just messing about with friends or whatever, or streaming, that sort of stuff, I'll play Cold War. So yeah, I'm not particularly bothered at all that the fact that the silver changing, as it wasn't really a problem in the first place. It just makes, you know, being able to earn 2 million silver in a game with no events going on pretty ridiculous. So yeah, being able to get a tier 10 in 3 games, I don't think anyone should be able to do that, or at least the silver equivalent to get 3 tier 10s. But for those of you who are that and you want to earn a ton of silver so that when this update goes live, I would recommend playing Cold War and being able to grind out the entire amount of silver that you can possibly do right now, because it's going to be worth more in Cold War. And of course, you're not going to be able to earn that much silver ever again, or at least, you know, until maybe they change it back. I don't know. But yeah, either way, hopefully it will be a good thing. And of course, if you want to grind out silver, now is the time to do it in the next 2 weeks. I highly recommend it. That's what I'm going to be doing when I play Cold War in the next few weeks. But either way, for example, these are the silver earn rates. So this is what they're saying. The T95E3 currently on average earns 52,000 silver per battle. It'll go down to 36,000. So it's not a huge difference. You can see there, it's about a 30% decrease, roughly, on how much silver you're earning in the battle. These are average silver. So, you know, based on a load of players' performance, I assume. And so 52,000 silver down to 36,000. Very, very decent. I don't think that's a big problem, considering how much of a reduction the silver actually was in Cold War. Currently, average silver on the M48A5 PI pattern, so this is a tech tree, I believe, This goes from 29,000 to 17,000. So roughly about a 40% decrease on the tech tree tank. And that's primarily because of the fact that you've got, a load of extra bonuses. There must be like a square root, a kind of dependent on the 1.5 times XP silver that you earn in a premium tanks. Because of course they're not linear, you'd expect that they would go down by the same amount if it was a linear equation in terms of how they calculate silver. Obviously, Wargaming not confirmed any of this. I'm just speculating on what the kind of how you actually earn silver in the game. I assume there's a lot of frags in there and stuff like that that will affect the silver as well, and of course all of that sort of stuff. That will depend on how much silver you're earning, but looking like between a 40 and a 30% discount on how much silver you'll earn in the game. So you can still make 100,000 plus every single game in Cold War, I would assume, given the fact that these are just your base average with no extra bonuses like, for example, premium time, that sort of stuff. So yeah, still very profitable by the looks of things. And so I don't think we can really complain at all. What happens next? As we mentioned, these changes will go live in the game on Tuesday, January 30th. We'll monitor player feedback and, if necessary, make adjustments so that we can enhance your gaming experience. What Wargaming really want is to actually get your honest feedback on whether you think this is a good thing and to see whether or not you think that this is a good thing for Cold War, which for me personally, even as a World War II player who mainly plays World War II, or at least just trying to finish off World War II before I delve into the kind of fest that is Cold War, then yeah, I think this is very, very good. I think it's very good for everyone who plays Cold War, which is primarily what it should be for. Either way, so please share your thoughts. Join us on social media accounts, including Discord, which you can find by literally just typing in World of Tanks console Discord on the internet, and you'll find it very quickly, or just going to World of Tanks console and then finding the Discord link or the article that you can click on. Either way, where you can discuss these changes with your fellow tank commanders. Your feedback will continue to shape the game's development, so we look forward to reading it. And at the end of the day, this is our goal. On average, players will be able to complete an entire tech tree line in Cold War by playing 25% less battles and with millions less vehicle XP and silver required. We can't wait to see you conquer new Cold War ground. So yeah, that is the article. A lot to kind of digest there. And of course, you can go back, you can rewatch parts if you want to have a look. But the overview is reduction in both vehicle XP and silver on all of the tech tree tanks in Cold War. You're getting more discounts on the lower tier vehicles versus the higher tier vehicles in Cold War, and therefore you're going to be able to kind of grind through the lower tiers much faster, and then still faster at the higher tiers but slightly less fast, like less of a discount, if that makes sense. And yeah, you're going to earn less silver in Cold War, but it shouldn't be a huge difference as we saw earlier. I don't think it's going to rock the boat with you're never going to be able to make money playing Cold War. I don't think that's going to be the case. I still think it will be profitable, and as Wargaming said, Cold War will still be more profitable than World War II. So even if you do want to play Cold War to earn more silver right now, then yeah, you'll still be able to earn more in Cold War premium tanks than the World War II premium tanks, for a generic example. But yeah, I think this is good. I think this is a good change. I'll be interested to see what you guys are thinking, because there's a lot to unpack, and of course we'll have to wait and see what it's like in the game. I think it will be good. I think that some of the tanks that you get held up on, having the modules change positions, just generically, I think it's a very good quality of life update that Cold War is about to get, and I look forward to seeing it. And definitely will be trying out some more tanks in Cold War and being able to experiment with loads more tanks than just the one or two that you might already have, because you can just get more tanks much quicker. So I think it's good. But that is not it for today's video. Of course, there is a new Chieftain concept test rig. Now, this looks like a Badger or an MBT mixed with a Badger, and that is exactly what it is. It is a tank destroyer, non-turreted tank destroyer in Cold War, which is quite interesting because, not having a turret in Cold War might be a bit of a pain. But we can have a look at the statistics nonetheless. It has 50% silver bonus. It's a premium tank, by the way, so you can earn silver right now. I think either way. Tank XP 10%, Commander XP 25%, hit points 2,650. This comes in at Era 2. Power to weight ratio 13.33. Means it's quite slow. It's not particularly very fast, and 48 kilometers an hour top speed is quite low as well. Reverse speed 26, quite fast, but not hugely fast in Cold War, I guess. Hull traverse and turret traverse about 38 and 36 respectively, so you can turn fairly quickly, and of course with perks and stuff like that and equipment that you can put in the tank, going to be significantly faster. 10 degrees of gun depression is amazing. 20 degrees of elevation is okay, but it could be limiting in some situations. Your limit of 15 degrees, so it has not got a big kind of arc on its gun, which can be a bit limiting, and I expect it could be a bit of a pain, but we'll try it out when it comes into the game. I'll give you a review on it. Penetration 418 millimeters with 483 millimeters on the premium, 290 on the kind of HE, or the, you know, less penetration, more damage kind of round, which is Hesh, by the way. And aim time 1.5 seconds, 0.26 accuracy, rate of fire, you've got 7.89 rounds a minute with a reload of 7.6. So pretty fast firing. I think it should be quite fun to play. I'm looking forward to testing it out. In terms of the armor model, we can have a look. It doesn't look great. I think this tank is going to get penned quite easily. The view range is good. But yeah, that cupola going to be a pain. The upper plate is quite angled, so we don't really know what the value of this actually is, but I'd assume it isn't going to bounce some of the premium rounds in Cold War. So that could be a bit of a complication with this tank. And the lower plate, can't really see it, but it might have a spaced armor plate. So it might not actually be good to go for the lower plate on this tank. But we don't know until, of course, we can see it in the game, and I'll do a review for you guys. Of course, if you want to purchase it, the Ultimate Edition is 16,500 gold, which is super, super expensive, and will cost you about £50, something like that. Yeah, it's quite expensive, maybe £40, something like that. But either way, very, very expensive. The test rig loaded version, which is kind of the second version of the packages, 14.5. So once again, costing you about 45 to 40 pounds. And then of course the base version, which will cost you about 39.99 or something like that, I believe, off the top of my head. So still very expensive for a tank, but if you like the look of it and you watch some reviews or whatever, not just myself, but also some of the Cold War YouTubers, things like Ricky Tikitave, and of course Petty, if he does do some of the Cold War, yeah, it should be quite interesting nonetheless. But I'll be interested to see what all of your thoughts about everything that we've covered in today's video will be. I am very looking forward to this. And it will be great to experiment in Cold War with a lot more tanks and being able to do it a lot faster, which is something that I will really like as a content creator. But of course, I'll be interested to see what you guys think as a player who just wants to play the game. Either way, hopefully you enjoyed. Like the video if you did, and of course check out loads more content. We're going to be doing tons more in the future as well. So stay tuned by subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a great rest of the day. Goodbye.